let's talk about how to prepare a statement of cost of goods manufactured. So the first thing I want to tell you about is that instead of buying inventory to resell, we are now making our inventory. And so we now have three categories of inventory. If you were buying and reselling, you would just have one category called inventory, which would really be finished goods because it's finished and it's ready to sell. But now that we're making inventory, we have three categories. The first one is raw materials. That's what our wood is before we start to work on our guitar. Once we start to work on it, we move it out of raw materials and into work in process. That's what it's called the whole time we're working on the guitar. And then once we finish the work on that guitar, we're going to move it out of work in process and into finished goods. Now you'll learn how to journalize those in the next chapter, but for now, you just need to know about those three categories of inventory because you're going to see them on these two statements that we're going to talk about. Now, before we look at them, I want to remind you about a calculation that you already know how to use and you know how to do, but you're going to see it multiple times in these statements. Here it is. Anytime you want to know how much has been used up, we did it with supplies back in chapter 2. You can start with your beginning supplies balance, for example. Then you can add your purchases. That gets you to all of your supplies that are available. If you subtract out your ending balance, that will tell you how much supplies you've used up. So this calculation you already know, but now we're going to use it several different times. So the first time we're going to use it is in this cost of goods manufactured statement. You're going to find out from this how much it costs you to manufacture your goods. And here's how you do it. You start off with your work in process inventory. So that's this middle one right here, because we're talking about actually working on this guitar. How much money did we spend working on this guitar? So we start off with work in process, the beginning inventory, January 1, 2016. That is our beginning balance. Then we're going to have costs to add. In our situation, the costs that we're going to add are going to be made up of three items. Alright, so the three items that we're going to be making this up would be direct materials, direct labor, and then all of our factory overhead. So these are the costs that we're going to be adding. So I'm on this line right here, cost to add. And again, I'm adding direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead. So here's my direct materials, here's my direct labor, and here's my factory overhead. Only for direct materials, I wasn't automatically given how much materials I used. Again, I had to calculate it. I calculate it using the same scenario. I say materials inventory, so now I'm talking about my raw materials that I start with. Beginning inventory plus my purchases gets me to my available for use. Subtract out my ending inventory, and that tells me my cost of direct materials used. Alright, let's keep going. We have direct materials, direct labor, factory overhead. When I add up those three, that gets me to my total manufacturing costs incurred during the period. My direct materials, my direct labor, my factory overhead tells me how much I incurred during the period. When I add that to what I started with, the $30,000 beginning, that gets me to my total manufacturing costs. So I'm right here under this available. I subtract out ending work in process of $24,000, and that gets me to cost of goods manufactured. That's another way of saying what I've used up. So that must have been my cost of goods manufactured. So I've included that right here under used up. So I sort of have one of these calculations inside another calculation. Now, let's place that number where it belongs in the income statement. I come up here. I'm going to use the same calculation again, only this time I'm going to be using it on my finished goods to find out how much my cost of goods sold are. So beginning finished goods plus what I added during the period. What I added during the period are called cost of goods manufactured from right here. Gets me to my total cost of goods available for sale. minus my ending finished goods. That gets me to my cost of goods sold. Again, I'm using the same scenario right here. And then I can finish out my income statement just the way that you know how. So, that is how you do a statement of cost of goods manufactured and an income statement. What I suggest you do is take a few examples, put it in a few times, and it will start to make more sense the more times you do it. There's not a lot to it. It's just a matter of understanding the basic format, which is beginning work in process plus these three items minus ending work in process gets you to cost of goods manufactured. So let me know if you have any questions.